Will you be traveling to the States anytime soon? Not ever. I wouldn't go over the border again. Canada's our neighbor, and you don't treat neighbors that way. And all of us are really upset about that. Canadians no longer cross the border. Border towns are becoming quiet. Then gas stations shut down, supermarkets take down their signs, warehouses gather dust, and in many places, that absence alone is enough to suffocate the entire local economy. People lose their income. Businesses teeter on the brink of bankruptcy. And we, for the first time, realize just how dependent we've become on our neighbors when they stop crossing the border. If this can happen in once bustling places like Blaine or Niagara Falls, is the city you live in truly safe? Watch top 10 U.S. border towns struggling as Canadians stop shopping in America. To find the answer for yourself, and note that this information is compiled from statistical data, not intended to discredit any organization or individual. Number 1. Blaine. Blaine, Washington, is a peculiar town, small in size, no major factories, no high-tech industry, nothing but a location right next to the Canadian border. Yet for over a decade, Blaine thrived thanks to something seemingly simple. Canadians. On weekends, people from Vancouver and Surrey flocked here to fill up gas, pick up Amazon packages, buy medicine, food, consumer goods. Everything was cheaper, taxes were lower, and it was convenient. Gas stations sprung up densely. Package depots operated 24/7. A town that didn't need to develop anything new, just maintain the habits of its northern neighbors. But in 2025, things started to reverse. Trade relations between the two countries became tense. New tax policies were applied to Canadian goods. Some political figures even proposed symbolic ideas, like making Canada the 51st state of the U.S. Though those remarks weren't official, they appeared frequently on TV and social media, making many Canadians feel alienated and unwelcome as before. Their response wasn't loud, no protests, no slogans, they just stopped coming. The Buy Canadian First movement spread quickly in British Columbia, fueled by domestic retail chains and social media. According to the Chicago Tribune, in June 2025, vehicle crossings from BC at the Blaine border dropped over 75% in just the first half of the year. Within months, 3 of the 5 major gas stations closed. Over 20 package pickup points shut down. Blaine residents who had lived off the stopover model suddenly lost their income. Some switched to domestic deliveries, but orders were insufficient. Meanwhile, across the border, Canadians were firm. They showcased domestic shopping on TikTok and Instagram, sharing receipts from London Drugs. Canadian Tire. Save on foods with the message, "We don't need to cross into the U.S. anymore." And so, Blaine, once a familiar destination, became a place no one talked about. The cross-border ATM that used to dispense cash weekly still glows, but no one stops by anymore. What shocked Blaine residents wasn't just the job loss, but the realization they had lived too long on a belief they didn't control. They once thought if customers dropped off, a simple promotion would bring them back. But month after month, the border remained empty. And what seemed permanent, the presence of Canadians, turned out to be fragile. And Blaine isn't the only place feeling this. To the northeast, towns that once lit up at night like Niagara Falls are also falling quiet. Number 2. Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls, New York. In the early months of 2025, was no longer a place where you needed to book rooms months in advance. In the middle of summer, hotels were still vacant, room rates hanging on roadside, signs dropped to just a few dozen dollars, and the Ontario license plates that used to crowd the main avenue were nowhere to be seen. A city that once thrived on the roar of the falls now only echoes it. And the cause wasn't a natural disaster or a nationwide recession, but a simple shift. Canadians no longer came to spend money here. For years, the other side, Niagara Falls, Ontario, was considered more scenic. But the U.S. side attracted visitors with its large outlet mall, cheaper prices, late-night restaurants, and lively casinos. Canadians from Toronto, Hamilton, Ottawa often drove over for dinner, shopping, a gamble, and then returned the same day. That flow of people was the heartbeat of the city. Though no one said it out loud, everyone here knew when Canadian cars arrived, everyone could make a living. But starting in 2025, that heartbeat noticeably slowed. According to data from the U.S. Bureau of Transportation Statistics, private vehicle crossings at the Rainbow Bridge dropped over 60% compared to the same period last year. Souvenir shops gathered dust, restaurants were empty, even on weekends, and hotels had to continually lower prices to fill rooms, to no avail. Some resorts temporarily closed, leaving hundreds unemployed or forced into unstable part-time work. Unlike small towns that rely on goods trade, Niagara Falls is a tourist city. Losing visitors means losing its very reason for existence. The service sector shrank, housing prices stagnated, even dropped in some border-adjacent areas. Many households could no longer cover rising living costs, now worsened by unpredictable income. The starkest difference came from the youth. Instead of waiting for northern visitors to return, many chose to leave. They moved to more vibrant U.S. cities, places with self-sufficient industries, not dependent on cross-border traffic. Detroit with GM Dearborn, home to Ford, or Fremont, California. Tesla's headquarters became popular destinations. Those places didn't need visitors. They needed operators, assemblers, developers. A quiet migration, but one that spoke volumes. The younger generation no longer believes in the old tourism model, no longer wants to live off things they can't control. While older residents clung to past habits, hoping everything would return to normal, the reality in Niagara Falls became clearer. This isn't just a slow tourist season. The model is outdated. When Canadians stopped coming, the city stopped being a destination and started becoming a place left behind. Number 3. Point Roberts. If the United States were a house, Point Roberts would be like a room where someone forgot to lock the back door. On the map, it's part of Washington, has the zip code 98,281, uses the US dollar, and follows federal laws. But to get here from the rest of the US, you have to go through Canada. For many years, that oddity was exactly why hundreds of people, especially retirees, chose to live here. It was cheaper, the climate was pleasant, and everything essential could be bought in Vancouver, just a few minutes drive away. Electricity, fuel, medicine, doctors, and delivery services all came from across the border. But in 2025, that door began to close, not through bans, but through small, continuous changes. Stricter cross-border regulations, a gradual decline in priority permits, and a slowdown in goods transport from Canada didn't shut the door. They simply stopped prioritizing a town they had no obligation to serve. And that has placed Point Roberts in a uniquely dangerous position. Nearly all of its living infrastructure depends on a country that isn't its own. Unlike other border towns that thrive on tourism or shopping, this one lives on connection. When Canadians stop coming to buy gas, pick up packages, or fill prescriptions, the supply chain literally breaks. Goods no longer arrive in time. Healthcare services can't be maintained, and even basic items like milk and sanitary pads become scarce. Some families now have to hire private boats from mainland America to transport essentials, as no reliable shipping channel remains. The only gas station operates 3 days a week. The post office has reduced its hours. Cafes that used to open on weekends for Canadian customers have now shut down completely. Young people haven't chosen Point Roberts for a long time. No high school, no hospital, no stable jobs. This place used to be suitable only for those with pensions or on social welfare, but now even they are beginning to feel insecure. Many cannot sell their homes because no one wants to move to a place where all basic services must be requested from the other side of a border. Suspended between two systems, U.S. law but Canadian dependence, Point Roberts now lives in a state of being disconnected. Not enough population to self-operate, not enough infrastructure to be self-sufficient, and no remaining cable strong enough to plug into the outside. Point Roberts used to be an ideal place to retire, slow down, and enjoy peace. But today, that peace has changed meaning. No longer a voluntary choice, but an involuntary isolation. A piece of America put in the wrong place, and when the time comes for connection, no one is plugging it in anymore. And the troubling part is, Point Roberts is not the only place in this situation. More and more border towns, even those with better locations, are starting to realize when Canadians stop coming. It's not just a loss of visitors, but the collapse of an entire way of life that had become routine. And not every town is strong enough to survive that disconnection. Number 4. Sault Ste. Marie. Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, used to be a place Canadians visited daily. Like going to the market, no need for special passports, no long travel, just a few minutes over the international bridge. And they were at the pharmacies, gas stations, electronic shops, and small eateries lining Ashman Avenue. They weren't loud like tourists, but steady, reliable, and the silent lifeblood of this city. Locals used to joke, "We don't have tourists, we have international regulars." That line is now just a memory. Since March 2025, according to data from the U.S. Bureau of Transportation Statistics, personal vehicle traffic from Ontario across the bridge dropped by over 57% in just 3 months. There was no ban, no lockdown, just Canadians choosing not to come. Partly because of increasingly tedious procedures, partly due to currency exchange rates, and partly because they started shopping right in Sault Ste. Marie, Canada, where new stores opened. Services diversified, and everything was closer. With no reason to cross, Canadians stayed on their side of the bridge, and that left the American side gasping for air. That quiet retreat created an immediate void. Small electronic shops downtown only open a few days a week, restaurants like Penny's, kitchen cut staff, and the family fare chains stopped bulk orders. Some stores still open, but reduced hours or switched to some. Meanwhile, across the border in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, supermarkets extended hours. Outlets expanded, and now hiring signs became more common. The two cities, once like twin siblings, are now splitting onto opposite paths. The consequence on the U.S. side isn't just lost revenue, it's a lost sense of connection. People working in retail, service jobs, or small-scale logistics now have to juggle multiple gigs. According to the Michigan Association of Realtors, homes for sale in Chippewa County jumped over 42% in just the past 2 months. Some residents chose to leave altogether, moving to bigger cities like Grand Rapids or Lansing, where industries are less border-dependent. But many others, especially older folks, are trying to hold on, hoping their regulars will return. Sault Ste. Marie used to feel like a small marketplace. Not fancy, not bustling, but enough to get by. Now that market has lost its loyal customers, staff still sit behind counters, signs still light up. But everyone knows if the flow from Ontario doesn't return, the entire city won't know what to rely on to stay standing. And Sault Ste. Marie is not alone. Along the northern border, other towns that once seemed stable are beginning to realize no connection lasts forever. And in a colder, more remote place in North Dakota, a town that once thrived on speed and transport is now turning into an empty parking lot. Number 5. Calais. If you ask Canadians in St. Stephen, New Brunswick, where their kitchen is, the answer might surprise you. It's Calais, Maine, not because it's famous for food, but because for many years, all daily essentials from milk, medicine, and batteries to small electronics were bought across the border in Calais. Just a few minutes over the bridge, and Canadians would hit the pharmacy, gas station, grab lunch, and head back. They weren't tourists, didn't seek experiences. They came for convenience, for low prices, and out of sheer habit. As if Calais were a shared kitchen, they opened the door each day without a second thought. From March to May 2025, everything changed. According to U.S. Customs and Border Protection, vehicle crossings from Canada over the Milltown and Ferry Point bridges dropped more than 64% year over year. No bans, no shocking announcements, just people choosing not to come. On the other side of the bridge, St. Stephen opened more supermarkets, added more services, and became more convenient. As Canadians stayed on their side, Calais started to lose its familiar rhythm. The fallout didn't collapse everything at once, but came like a long winter. The grocery store near the bridge reduced its opening days, family-run restaurants shortened hours and cut down menus. The post office grew quiet, and pharmacies stopped ordering certain items. No more questions like how much in Canadian, no more quick stops for a carton of milk or a pack of pads. Calais became a kitchen stocked only with instant noodles and salt. Enough to survive, but not enough to feel alive. What left people disheartened wasn't just money but the emptiness. Elderly residents, once used to friendly glances from their northern neighbors, now began to feel isolated. Some families started listing their homes. They weren't waiting for Canadians to come back, because they knew this change wasn't just temporary. Listings surged even in summer, a season usually calm. Many want to leave, but few want to arrive. Meanwhile, St. Stephen didn't crumble without Calais. They have new supermarkets, brightly lit shops, and now hiring signs all over town. The two towns, once linked like halves of a border rhythm, are now drifting apart. And Calais, the one seen as the open kitchen, is becoming unnecessary. The stove is still there, but no one turns it on. And if Calais shows how a town can grow cold from a lack of simple visits, then in Vermont, another town is growing cold for the opposite reason. Too close. A place where the streets are split by a painted border, where people used to walk with one foot in the U.S. and the other in Canada. Number 6. Derby line. There are places in the world where borders aren't marked by fences but by a thin black line painted down the middle of the road. Derby line is one such place. A small town in Vermont where you can sit in the reading room in the U.S. while your feet rest in Canadian territory. People used to call this the soft border, because for decades, folks on both sides lived as though there were no boundary at all. They went to the same farmers' markets, sat in the same church services, donated to a dual nationality library, ate pancakes at the little cafe on the American side, and walked north as if just visiting the neighbors. Canadians didn't come to Derby Line for tourism or big spending. They came to pick up a few bottles of cold medicine, a bottle of hand sanitizer, a loaf of signature cinnamon bread, a few sets of children's clothes from the discount store. Small items, but ones that helped maintain the local rhythm of life. They kept pharmacy prices stable, helped the library operate bilingually, and added laughter to community gatherings. Derby Line never aimed for glittering growth. It just needed things to stay the same, and that was enough to live. But from the beginning of 2025, things began to change. No more steady stream of cars crossing Church Street. No more soft jingling of the bakery door each weekend morning. No more familiar faces that didn't need greeting. According to the Bureau of Border Traffic Statistics, vehicle traffic from Stansted to Derby Line dropped by more than 66% in just the first 3 months of the year, one of the steepest declines on the eastern border. There was no conflict, no grand announcement. Canadians simply stopped coming. They chose to stay on their side for convenience, because prices were now comparable, because border procedures had become more tedious. And so, the town that was once naturally shared was gradually left behind. Shops didn't close immediately, but shortened hours. Cut stock. A small pharmacy stopped ordering products for French speakers, because no one needed them anymore. Church services were missing a third of their congregation. Community meetings lacked the familiar Quebec accent. The bookshelves at Haskell Library still sat across the border, but the readers were now only on one side. Derby Line didn't experience a shock. It experienced a quiet retreat, face by face, handshake by handshake, habit by habit. A cafe might still sell pastries, but without the northern accented small talk. A town hall might still be lit, but no longer filled with bilingual laughter. And the people here, those who had lived all their lives with a sense of borderlessness, now understand, not every goodbye comes with a warning. A town may keep every brick in place, but if the people who once crossed the line now choose to turn around, it means that rhythm of life has already shifted. Number 7. Houlton. Have you ever gone somewhere simply because it was right on your route? Houlton, Maine, used to be such a place. Situated at the end of Interstate 95, the vital artery stretching from Florida to the northern border. Houlton was once the gateway to America for thousands of Canadians each week. Cars with New Brunswick plates would line up at the checkpoint, stop to refuel, buy candy, swing by Walmart, get an oil change, then continue their journey inland. No one came to visit, but everyone stopped. Then Houlton disappeared, not from the map, but from routine. From early 2025, according to data from the U.S. Bureau of Transportation Statistics, vehicle traffic from Canada into the U.S. via the Houlton port of entry dropped more than 68% year over year. No bans, no political declarations. Canadians just changed their route. They chose smaller, more distant crossings to avoid bureaucracy, or switched to online shopping. Collecting parcels at hubs in Calais or towns with more services, more deals, or fewer policy headaches became the new stopovers. And so, Houlton, once thriving simply by being in the right place, suddenly wasn't anymore. The signs still lit up, the discount banner still hung, but the people no longer stopped. A gas station that once ran 12 pumps was down to 4. Walmart and Martin's, which used to sell goods by the pallet to Canadian customers, shrank their storage. Parcel pickup shops, once buzzing with hundreds of Amazon deliveries, began considering closure. The real fear wasn't lost revenue. It was the sense of being erased from the consumer map, without warning. Houlton's residents couldn't understand what had happened. There was no accident, no disaster, no headline saying, "As of today, no one needs to stop in Houlton anymore." But they began to realize it through missing road signs, empty parking lots, weekends passing without anyone asking, "Where's the nearest gas station?" It felt like a train station still lit where the trains had stopped stopping, for those in shipping, auto repair, and parcel handling. It was a heavy blow. They didn't lose business to competition, but because the route itself changed. Houlton was no longer the starting point but a bypassed bend, like tweaking your GPS for a quicker route and unknowingly erasing a once familiar rest stop. On Houlton's quiet afternoons, signs still glow, but no one looks up. Stores still turn on their lights, but no Canadian customers step in. And the people here, those who believe that being in the right place was enough, now realize location can become outdated if the world chooses a different path. Number 8. This 8th name isn't a tourist town, much less a famous destination, but for Canadians from Cornwall, Ontario, it used to be a familiar weekend stop. They came to refuel, shop at Walmart or Target, swing by the St. Lawrence Center Mall, and return before dinner. Everything was just right. Cheaper prices, a wider variety of goods, and border procedures that weren't too much of a hassle. And thanks to that steady stream of visitors, Massena stayed alive. But then, Canadians stopped coming, not because of conflict or bans, simply because they chose to stay. Since early 2025, vehicle traffic from Canada across Massena's border bridge has dropped over 70%. According to U.S. Customs and Border Protection, price differences have shrunk, the CAD exchange rate is less favorable, and inspections have grown increasingly tedious, leading Canadians to conclude there's no need to travel far for familiar goods. And when the visitors disappeared, everything began to unravel quickly. It wasn't the small shops that closed first. It was the big names. Walmart pulled out, Target shut down its branch. The signs that once symbolized faith that this town was big enough to serve went dark without warning. Residents remained, still needing groceries, still needing daily essentials. But the places they once visited weekly were now just empty parking lots and scattered shops waiting for customers who no longer came. Those with cars drove over half an hour to another town. Those without seniors, single mothers, hourly workers were left unsure how to manage. A town with people but no place to buy food. A community not poor enough to qualify for aid, but not wealthy enough to build a new supermarket. And what disappointed the people of Massena most wasn't the loss of a store, it was the silence. No announcement, no consultation. One morning, the place they believed would always be there vanished from the shopping map. Massena once survived thanks to location. Close to Canada, close to the border bridge, with just enough big-name stores to feel seen. But it turns out all that only lasts as long as visitors keep coming. When Canadians turned away, the entire system built around them collapsed. And the Americans who live here, who never left, suddenly felt like they no longer fit into anyone's plans. The town still stands but is now just an empty spot between two livelier consumer zones. And among the removed signs and silent shelves, the people here are starting to understand, staying doesn't always mean being served. Sometimes the ones who never leave are the ones left behind the fastest. Number 9. Port Angeles. Port Angeles was never on a transnational route, nor a bustling hub with a major highway running through. But it had something other towns didn't. A gateway to the ocean, and a private passage to Canada. Every day, the Blackball Ferry from Victoria, British Columbia, brought groups of visitors here, not for large-scale shopping but to stroll along the boardwalk, sip coffee by the sea, visit cosmetics and clothing shops, or pick up a few small electronics before heading back. For many years, locals grew used to the ferry's rhythm, like the tides coming and going, arriving and departing. And they believed it would never stop. But then it stopped, not because of natural disasters or disputes, just because Canadians stopped coming. Since early 2025, the number of passengers from Victoria to Port Angeles has dropped by more than 64%, according to a report from the Port of Port Angeles. Ferry ticket prices rose, border procedures tightened, and for many Canadians, the things that once made Port Angeles exciting could now be found right in Victoria. Cosmetics, discount stores, outlets, cafes. They no longer had a reason to cross the sea to visit a place that felt like a copy of their own. And so, the ferry, once a lifeline, gradually lost its passengers. There were no mass closures, no overwhelming for lease signs, just individual shops shrinking their hours, opening fewer days. Restaurants trimmed their menus. A few small hotels stopped taking weekend bookings. People who once made a living, cleaning rooms, guiding tourists, or offering small services, turned delivery gigs, part-time jobs, or quit the trade entirely. But the deepest change was in the feeling about the place itself. A port town, once awaiting guests daily, now had to learn to live with no one stopping by. Port Angeles is still as beautiful as ever. The water still shimmers, the dock still catches the wind, and the sunset still bathes the harbor in pink each evening. But the lights along the boardwalk, once lit to welcome guests from the north, are now only decorations. No one disembarks, no one returns. And in that light, locals have begun to see clearly. A town doesn't need to be ugly or impoverished to be left behind. Sometimes, simply being forgotten is enough to slip off someone's map of life. Port Angeles didn't collapse like a bankrupt factory. It just faded bit by bit. Like a cafe that's still open but no one stops in. Like a clock still ticking but no one glances at it. The people here, who once believed in natural beauty, in unique geography, in cross-sea connection, now understand connection, if not maintained, can fade like condensation on a port window. Number Sapul, Pembina. If in Port Angeles, Canadians once visited for the view, to rest, then gradually stopped, in Pembina, they never stayed longer than 15 minutes. They came only to pick up packages. And when they stopped coming, The town collapsed like a warehouse that's lost power. Pembina, North Dakota, isn't a place for sightseeing or relaxed shopping. It existed for one reason only: to serve as a pickup point for Canadians. For over a decade, residents of Winnipeg and small businesses in Manitoba saw Pembina as a backup warehouse for every U.S. order. They crossed the border for Amazon, eBay, car parts, home supplies, items too expensive or unavailable in Canada. No tourists, just a steady flow of cars. Stop sign, turn around. The ecosystem here was built for that purpose. Many parcel depots, logistics centers, large parking lots, parcel pickup signs everywhere. UPS, FedEx, Amazon ran nearly 24/7. No need for fancy cafes or fine dining. Just hundreds of parcels delivered daily, and the whole town could survive. Until it all stopped in 2025. The Canadian dollar dropped sharply. Canada tightened customs checks, requiring detailed declarations for U.S. imports. Shopping groups like Winnipeg Deals began advising, stop picking up from Pembina. It's too much hassle, takes too much time. And within just a few months, traffic through the Pembina-Emerson crossing dropped by over 72%, according to the Canada Border Services Agency. Canadians stopped coming, but what's worse, they reset the whole supply chain, no longer needing Pembina at all. A logistics center partnered with Amazon shut down. The FedEx station operated minimally. UPS opened only 2 days a week. Dozens of personal parcel businesses took down their signs, chained their gates. Parking lots gathered dust. Warehouses once buzzing turned cold as ice. A town that lived on stopovers now just a place people used to know. Pembina had no more planned. Beef factories, no central market, no other industries beyond parcel receiving. And when the cars from the north stopped coming, the town was erased from the regional logistics map, like an unnecessary link in the chain. What chilled residents wasn't the lost income, but the feeling of being forgotten. No one announced Pembina's role was over, but when everyone turned away, you knew you were no longer part of the game. Even the once bright parcel station lights now just flicker. Because no one has shut the system down yet. Pembina used to be a resilient transit hub, not flashy, but always busy. Now it's just a quiet name drifting in the cold plains, where a few elderly residents still unlock their doors each morning, as if waiting for something. Though no one comes anymore. A border town's heartbeat has stopped, not from pain but because no one thought it needed to beat anymore. 10 American border towns are quietly fading, not due to storms or crises, but because of something deceptively simple. A familiar neighbor stopped shopping here. The paradox is this: the very closeness that once sustained these communities has become their fatal weakness. When an entire town bets on a returning crowd, even a single turning away can unravel the entire system. Perhaps it's time America, and each small town within it, learns to stand on its own. But how long will that take? Who will start? And if this trend spreads, could the city you live in be next? If you found this video useful, don't forget to like and subscribe. The analyses in this video are based on current data and independent perspectives. They are not intended to predict the future with certainty or cause confusion.